My father grabbed the microphone from my mother's hands at my college graduation. Told 300 people he paid for my degree while she contributed a little. I watched my mother's face crumble, the woman who worked 3 jobs for 15 years. I walked off that stage, leaned into her ear, and whispered 7 words. What happened next brought security to his seat and silenced the entire auditorium. The auditorium held 300 people. My mother stood at the podium in a dress she'd bought on sale 3 months earlier. She was the guest speaker, invited because she'd been recognized as a major scholarship donor. Her hand shook slightly as she held her notes. I sat in the 3rd row with my graduating class. Cap and gown, cords around my neck, diploma waiting. This was supposed to be perfect. My father sat in the front row. He wasn't supposed to be there. We'd sent him the ceremony details out of obligation, never thinking he'd actually come. But there he was, new wife beside him, both in expensive clothes that probably cost more than my mother's monthly rent. Mom started talking about sacrifice. About working multiple jobs. About believing in your children's dreams even when your bank account says it's impossible. That's when Dad stood up. Just stood right up in the middle of her speech. Started walking toward the stage like he owned it. A few people looked confused. Mom stopped talking, her voice trailing off mid-sentence. She watched him approach with this look I'd never seen before, part confusion, part dread. He walked up those stage steps. Held out his hand for the microphone. And my mother, God, my mother who'd fought so hard for everything, just handed it to him. Years of being talked over, made small, convinced her voice didn't matter. It was automatic. Folks, I appreciate my ex-wife's words, he said into the microphone, his voice booming across the auditorium. But let's be honest about who really made this possible. My stomach dropped. I paid for this degree, he continued, gesturing toward me. For years of tuition, books, housing. My daughter's sitting here today because of my financial support. Her mother helped a little, sure. But let's give credit where it's actually due. The audience went completely silent. That thick, uncomfortable silence where everyone knows something is very wrong but nobody knows what to do. My mother stood frozen beside him on stage, her face drained of color. She looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. I watched her shrink. This woman who'd raised me alone, who I'd watched fall asleep at the kitchen table over bills, who wore the same winter coat for 8 years so I could have new cleats for soccer. She was disappearing right in front of me. My hands were shaking. Not from nerves. From rage. Dad kept talking. Something about responsibility, about stepping up, about being a provider. Every word was a lie, and 300 people were believing him. My mother's moment, the one recognition she'd ever gotten for years of silent sacrifice, was being stolen right in front of everyone. I stood up. Didn't plan it, didn't think about it. Just stood up in my cap and gown and started walking toward the stage. My classmates whispered as I passed. Faculty members looked concerned. I didn't care. I climbed those steps and walked straight to my mother. She looked at me with wet eyes, humiliation written across every feature. I leaned in close to her ear, close enough that only she could hear. 7 words. That's all it took. Show them the folder. The receipts. Her expression changed. The devastation flickered, replaced by something else. Something stronger. She looked down at her purse, then back at me. I squeezed her hand. She turned to face the audience, reached into her purse. My father was still talking, oblivious, microphone in hand, performing for the crowd. Mom pulled out a manila folder. Thin, worn at the edges. She'd been carrying it with her all day and I'd never even noticed. She walked over to Dad and gently took the microphone back. This time, he let her. Probably confused about what was happening. The audience leaned forward in their seats. "You're right," Mom said quietly into the microphone. "We should give credit where it's due." She opened the folder. And everything changed. 15 years earlier, I was 7 years old when Dad moved out. I remember it was a Tuesday because I'd just lost my first tooth at school and wanted to show him. I ran into the house with my tooth in a plastic treasure chest from the nurse's office. Mom was sitting at the kitchen table crying. Dad had fallen in love with someone from his office. Younger, prettier, with no stretch marks or exhaustion in her eyes. He packed his clothes in garbage bags because he said he was in a hurry. Said he'd come back for the rest. He never did. The divorce was fast. He wanted it over with. Mom was too devastated to fight. He got his freedom. She got me and the mortgage on a house she couldn't afford alone. The child support checks came monthly. $400. Exactly what the court required, never a penny more. It arrived on the first of every month like clockwork, and every month Mom would stare at it like it was a cruel joke. $400 was supposed to feed me, clothe me, cover school supplies, medical bills, everything a growing kid needed. It didn't even cover groceries. Mom started working 3 jobs within 6 months. Mornings at the diner on 5th Street, she'd leave at 5 a.m., come home smelling like coffee and bacon grease. Then her office job, the one she'd had before the divorce, secretary work that barely paid above minimum wage. Weekends she did catering for weddings and parties, coming home after midnight in a stained white shirt, her feet swollen. I learned to be quiet. Learned not to ask for things. Learned that when other kids got new bikes or went to summer camp, those things weren't for us. I remember being 11 and needing shoes for gym class. Mom looked at the price tag, $32, and I watched her eyes fill with tears. She bought them anyway. Then she wore her sneakers with a hole in the toe for another year. Dad got remarried when I was 9. Big wedding in the Bahamas. I wasn't invited, but I saw the pictures on Facebook. His new wife wore a dress that probably cost more than our monthly mortgage. They honeymooned in Italy for 2 weeks. Meanwhile, Mom was rationing meals. Eating smaller portions so I could have enough. Telling me she wasn't hungry when I knew she was. The birthday check started when I was 10. $200 every year, arriving in a card with some generic message about being proud of me. Dad would call the same day, asking if I got it, making sure I thanked him. Like $200 once a year made up for everything else. Like it made him a father. High school was harder. I needed a graphing calculator for advanced math, $85. Mom worked double shifts to cover it. I needed a laptop for junior year. Mom sold her grandmother's ring, the only valuable thing she'd inherited. I cried when I found out. She told me it was just a thing, that my education mattered more. I applied to 12 colleges. Got into 8. Chose the state university because it was cheapest and I'd earned a partial academic scholarship. 50% tuition covered. The rest, tuition balance, room and board, fees, books, came out to about $23,000 per year. Mom sat at the kitchen table with a calculator, adding and subtracting numbers until 2 in the morning. I watched her from the hallway, too scared to interrupt. She was 43 years old and looked 60. She took on a fourth income stream, online transcription work she could do late at night. She signed up for night classes at the community college to get a certification that would let her move to a better-paying office job. She started cutting coupons for everything, buying generic brands, skipping meals more often. She sold my grandmother's jewelry box. Then the china set. Then her own wedding ring from the marriage to Dad, melted down for cash. $230. She cried while the jeweler weighed it. Dad sent his yearly birthday check. Posted on social media about a vacation to Costa Rica. His new wife wore designer sunglasses in every photo. 4 years of college. Mom paid every semester bill in full. Every meal plan, every textbook, every housing fee. I got work-study jobs and tried to help. She wouldn't take my money. Said it was her job, not mine. Dad told relatives he was helping me through school. Talked about the financial burden at family gatherings I wasn't invited to. I heard about it through cousins. My mother never corrected him. Just kept working, kept paying, kept sacrificing in complete silence. Until graduation day. Freshman year, the first tuition bill came in August. I'd never seen a number that large on a piece of paper. $22,800, due by the first day of classes. Mom sat at our kitchen table with her laptop open, her checking account displayed on the screen. $4,100. That's what she had after working 3 jobs all summer. She took out a personal loan. 9% interest. I watched her sign the papers with shaking hands, her signature barely legible. She worked extra catering shifts every weekend that semester to make the monthly payments. $260 a month, every month, on top of everything else. I called Dad once that year. Asked if he could help with books. $300 for the semester. He said times were tight, but he'd see what he could do. He sent $100 in November. I'd already bought the books in August on a credit card Mom opened in my name, promising we'd pay it off together. Sophomore year, I made the dean's list. Mom cried when the letter came. She hung it on the refrigerator next to my kindergarten art. I got a small scholarship for academic achievement, $1,500. It felt like winning the lottery. Mom used it to pay down her loan. I started noticing things. The way she'd wear the same pair of work pants until the knees wore thin. How she'd eat cereal for dinner and tell me she was trying something new when I knew we just didn't have grocery money that week. The way she'd turn the heat down to 58 in winter and wear 2 sweaters in the house. Junior year was the hardest. I needed an internship to complete my degree requirements, but unpaid internships were the only option in my field. That meant I couldn't work my campus job that semester. I'd been contributing $300 a month. That income disappeared. Mom picked up weekend shifts at a retail store. Folding clothes for minimum wage at 51 years old after working her other jobs all week. She'd come home at 11 p.m. on Sundays and be back at the diner by 5 a.m. Monday. I found her asleep at the kitchen table one night. Her laptop still open, bills spread everywhere, calculator showing numbers I didn't want to see. Her face was pressed against a stack of envelopes, mascara smudged. She'd fallen asleep crying. I tried to quit. Told her I'd take a year off, work full-time, help pay. She looked at me like I'd suggested burning the house down. "You're finishing," she said. "This isn't up for discussion." Dad posted photos from a cruise that semester. Alaska, 7 days, balcony suite. His wife held champagne in every picture. My birthday check arrived late that year. Still $200. Senior year, the final payment deadline approached. April 15th, $9,300 to cover the last semester, summer classes, graduation fees. Mom's savings account showed $2,000. She sold her car. The Honda she'd driven for 14 years, the one with the dent in the passenger door and the broken air conditioning. She got $4,000 for it. Started taking the bus to work, leaving an hour earlier to make her shifts on time. I didn't find out until weeks later when I came home for spring break. She was standing at the bus stop in the rain, her work uniform soaked through, holding grocery bags. I pulled over in my friend's borrowed car, and she climbed in without meeting my eyes. "What happened to your car?" I asked. "It was old anyway," she said. "I didn't need it anymore." She was lying. I could hear it in her voice. That night I checked the credit union website. She'd left her laptop open by accident. The transaction history showed a $4,200 deposit from a private sale. The same day she'd made the final tuition payment. I sat on the bathroom floor and sobbed quietly so she wouldn't hear. My mother had sold her car so I could graduate. The birthday check arrived in March. $200, same as always. Same generic card. Dad's signature in blue ink at the bottom. I ripped it into pieces and threw it away. Mom found it in the trash and taped it back together. "We need it," she said softly. Graduation approached. I was selected as a student speaker. Mom got invited as a guest speaker for the Parent Scholarship Donor Recognition Program. She'd contributed enough over 4 years to qualify. She bought a dress from TJ Maxx for the ceremony. Navy blue, simple. $32 on clearance. She got her hair done for the first time in 3 years. She looked so proud. So tired. So completely wrung out. And she deserved that moment more than anything. Graduation morning felt like Christmas when I was little, that nervous excitement where you can't eat breakfast. Mom was up at 6, pressing her dress, checking her speech notes for the 100th time. "Do I sound okay?" she asked, practicing in front of the bathroom mirror. "I don't want to sound stupid." "You sound perfect," I told her. And I meant it. She'd written about sacrifice without ever using the word. About believing in dreams when your bank account says you can't afford them. About small choices adding up to big outcomes. We drove to campus together. She parallel parked badly, still wasn't used to the new used car she'd bought after selling the Honda, smaller, older, cheaper. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel. "I'm so nervous," she admitted. "I've never spoken in front of so many people." "They're lucky to hear from you," I said. I kissed her cheek and headed to line up with my graduating class. She walked toward the family seating area, clutching her folder of notes. I watched her disappear into the crowd. That's when I saw him. Dad. Front row. Navy suit that probably cost $800. New wife beside him in a cream dress and heels that clicked on the auditorium floor. They'd arrived early enough to get premium seats. My stomach turned. I'd sent him the ceremony details because Mom insisted, he's still your father, but I never thought he'd actually show up. He hadn't attended a single parent-teacher conference, band concert, or soccer game in 15 years. Why would he come to this? The ceremony started. Department heads gave speeches. Awards were distributed. Then came the Parent Scholarship Donor Recognition segment. Mom's name was called. She walked to the stage, looking small and terrified. Got to the podium, adjusted the microphone. Smiled nervously at the audience. Started speaking. Her voice shook at first, then steadied. She talked about second jobs and hard choices. About missing sleep but never missing a tuition payment. About wanting your child's life to be bigger than yours. It was beautiful. Dad shifted in his seat. I saw him lean over and whisper something to his wife. She nodded. My chest tightened. Mom was mid-sentence, talking about the importance of education, when Dad stood up. Just pushed his chair back and stood. People around him glanced over, confused. Mom's voice faltered. She stopped speaking, her eyes going wide. Dad walked toward the stage. His footsteps echoed in the silent auditorium. Faculty members exchanged looks. Mom stood frozen at the podium, watching him approach with this expression of pure dread. He climbed the stairs. Walked right up to her. Extended his hand toward the microphone. And she gave it to him. I wanted to scream. Wanted to run up there. But I was frozen too, trapped in my row of graduating students, watching in horror. Folks, I appreciate my ex-wife's words, Dad said, his voice confident and loud. But let's be honest about who really made this possible. No. No, no, no. I paid for this degree, he continued, turning to gesture at me in the crowd. 4 years of tuition at a state university isn't cheap. Books, housing, all those fees they add on. My daughter's sitting here today because I stepped up financially. Because I took responsibility. Mom's face went blank. That same blank expression she'd worn the day he told her he was leaving. Shock and humiliation mixed together. Her mother helped a little, sure, Dad said, glancing at Mom like she was an assistant who'd fetched coffee. But let's give credit where it's actually due. I'm the one who made the real sacrifice here. The audience was completely still. 300 people holding their breath. My mother looked like she'd been slapped. Dad kept talking. About his contributions, his support, his role as a father. Every word was a knife. Every sentence erased years of Mom's exhausted mornings and missed meals and sold jewelry. I watched her shoulders curl inward. Watched her step back from the podium, making herself smaller. Giving him the stage, the recognition, the credit for work she'd done alone. And something in me snapped. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. Heads turned. I didn't care. I walked out of my row, past confused classmates, toward the stage. Faculty members started to move toward me, probably thinking I was causing a disruption. I held up one hand, wait, and kept walking. Climbed the stage stairs, my graduation gown swishing around my legs. Dad was still talking, oblivious. I walked straight to my mother. Leaned in close to her ear. Close enough to smell her drugstore perfume. 7 words. That's all I needed. Show them the folder. The receipts. Mom's head turned toward me, her eyes searching my face. I squeezed her hand and nodded toward her purse. The manila folder she'd been carrying all day. The one I'd watched her organize obsessively for weeks. I hadn't understood why she was bringing it. Thought maybe it was extra copies of her speech or ceremony programs. But looking at her face now, I realized. She'd known. Some part of her had known he might do this. Her expression shifted. The humiliation cracked, and underneath was something harder. Something that had been building for 15 years. She straightened her spine. Dad was still at the microphone, saying something about financial responsibility and setting an example. His wife nodded along from the front row, her face sympathetic like she felt sorry for Mom. Like my mother was some charity case they'd graciously helped. Mom opened her purse. Pulled out the folder. Thin, worn at the corners, stuffed with papers. Dad glanced over, still talking, barely registering what she was doing. She walked toward him. Not aggressive, not dramatic. Just steady, purposeful steps across the stage. She reached out and gently took the microphone from his hand. He let her, probably confused, maybe thinking she was going to thank him or add something to his narrative. Mom turned to face the audience. Opened the folder. The microphone picked up the soft rustle of papers. "You're right," she said, her voice quiet but clear. "We should give credit where it's due." She pulled out the first document. Held it up so people could see, though they were too far away to read it. "This is the tuition payment for fall semester, freshman year," Mom said. $22,800. Paid from my checking account on August 15, 2021. Dad's smile flickered. Mom pulled out another paper. Spring semester, freshman year. Same amount. My account. January 12, 2022. Another document. Sophomore year, fall. My account. August 14, 2022. She kept going. Every semester, every payment. 8 total tuition payments across 4 years. She held each one up, stated the amount, stated the date, stated whose name was on the payment. The audience was completely silent now. A different kind of silent than before. This was the kind where everyone's holding their breath. Books for freshman year, Mom continued. $347. My credit card. Barnes & Noble campus bookstore receipt. Dad's face was changing color. Getting red. Housing deposit, freshman year. $800. My account. Meal plan, 4 years. $6,400 total. My account. Lab fees. Technology fees. Parking passes. Health insurance through the university. She pulled out receipt after receipt. Every single expense documented, organized chronologically, highlighted in yellow marker. Years of careful record keeping. Total amount paid over 4 years from my accounts, Mom said, her voice getting stronger. $67,340. She set the folder down on the podium. Pulled out one more paper. Held it up. This is a record of child support payments and birthday gifts from my ex-husband over the same 4 years. She paused. Looked directly at Dad. Total, $1,600. The audience gasped. Actually gasped, a collective intake of breath that echoed through the auditorium. Dad's face went from red to purple. "This is inappropriate," he started. You're right, Mom interrupted, still holding the microphone. It is inappropriate. It's inappropriate to lie in front of 300 people. It's inappropriate to steal credit for someone else's sacrifice. And it's inappropriate to humiliate the person who actually did the work while you took vacations and posted photos online. His mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. Mom turned to someone in the front row, campus security, who stood during all graduation ceremonies. Could you please escort this gentleman back to his seat? She asked calmly. He's disrupting the ceremony. The security officer started walking toward the stage. Dad looked around frantically, like he was searching for support or an escape route. This is ridiculous, he sputtered. I'm her father. Sir, please return to your seat, the security officer said, reaching the top of the stage steps. Dad looked at his wife. She was staring at her lap, her face flushed. No help coming from that direction. I don't need to be escorted, he said quickly. I'll go. He walked off the stage, the security officer following close behind. Every eye in the auditorium tracked his movement back to his seat. He sat down heavily. His wife whispered something to him. He didn't respond, just stared straight ahead. Mom stood at the podium, still holding the folder. Her hands had stopped shaking. The audience started clapping. Slowly at first, then building. Then someone stood up. Then another. Within seconds, the entire auditorium was on their feet, giving my mother a standing ovation. She looked stunned. Then she started crying. Mom tried to continue her speech, but her voice broke immediately. She looked down at her notes, then out at the standing crowd, tears streaming down her face. She'd spent 15 years being invisible, the tired woman in the background, the one who made things happen quietly while everyone looked elsewhere. And now 300 people were standing for her. Really seeing her. Finally understanding what she'd carried alone. I walked over to her. Put my arm around her shoulders. She was shaking, crying so hard she couldn't speak. I took the microphone gently. That's my mom, I said into it, my own voice cracking. That's the woman who worked 3 jobs for 15 years so I could be here today. Who sold her car so I could afford my last semester. Who ate cereal for dinner so I could have real meals. Who never asked for credit, never asked for recognition, never asked for anything at all. The applause grew louder. Some people were crying too. I saw faculty members wiping their eyes. Students in my graduating class were standing, clapping until their hands must have hurt. Mom's legs gave out a little. I held her up, supporting her weight. She buried her face in my shoulder, her whole body heaving with sobs. 15 years of exhaustion and sacrifice and silent suffering were pouring out of her all at once. From his seat, Dad sat frozen. His wife had put distance between them, scooted her chair away by several inches. People around them weren't even pretending not to stare. Some looked disgusted. Others just looked sad, shaking their heads. The security officer stood at the end of his row. Not threatening, just present. A clear message, 'cause any more disruption and you're leaving entirely. The university president walked onto the stage, signaling for the audience to sit. The applause gradually died down, but I could see people still wiping their eyes, still looking at Mom with something like reverence. I think, the president said gently to Mom, that was the most powerful speech we've ever had at this ceremony. Mom laughed and cried at the same time, nodding but unable to form words. The president handed her tissues from her pocket. Mom dabbed at her face, smearing her mascara, not caring at all how she looked. I helped her off the stage. We sat in the front row, in seats the president offered us. Better seats than where I'd been sitting with my class. Better seats than where Dad sat, silent and humiliated, 3 rows back. The ceremony continued. Names were called. Students walked across the stage to receive diplomas. It felt surreal, like watching it happen to someone else. Then my name was announced. I walked onto the stage alone at first. Shook hands with the dean. Accepted my diploma in its leather folder. Smiled for the official photo. Then I did something that wasn't part of the program. I walked to the microphone. The student speaker slot had been earlier in the ceremony, but I didn't care. I had something to say. I want to thank one person specifically, I said. My voice echoed through the auditorium. Mom, can you stand up? She looked at me like I was crazy. Shook her head. I waited. The audience started clapping again, encouraging her. Finally, reluctantly, she stood. This degree has her name on it, I said, holding up the diploma. But it should have hers. Every late night, every missed meal, every sacrifice I didn't even know she was making. She's the one who made this happen. She's the one who believed I could do this even when the numbers said it was impossible. I looked directly at where Dad was sitting. He was staring at the floor, his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle twitching from across the room. Real parents don't announce their sacrifices, I continued. They just make them. Every day. In ways their kids might never even fully understand. That's what love actually looks like. Mom was crying again, but smiling this time. A real smile, unguarded and full of pride. I walked off the stage and straight to her. Handed her my diploma. This is yours, I said. You earned it more than I did. She shook her head, pushing it back toward me. It's ours, she whispered. We did it together. We hugged while the audience clapped again. Over her shoulder, I watched Dad get up from his seat. His wife followed. They walked up the aisle toward the exit, leaving before the ceremony even finished. He didn't look back. I didn't care. I had the only parent I needed right there in my arms. We stayed until the very end of the ceremony. Sat through every name, every handshake, every diploma distributed. When the final student crossed the stage and the dean declared us officially graduated, the entire auditorium erupted in celebration. Caps flew into the air. People hugged and cried and cheered. Mom and I just sat there holding hands. Several faculty members approached afterward. The university president first, then the dean of my college, then the financial aid director. They all said the same thing in different ways, they had no idea. Years of processing Mom's tuition payments, seeing her name on every transaction, but they'd never known the full story behind those numbers. We'd like to feature your story, the president said to Mom. In our alumni magazine. In our financial aid materials. So many parents sacrifice quietly, and they deserve recognition. Mom looked overwhelmed. I didn't do anything special, she said. I just did what any parent would do. No, the financial aid director said gently. You did what every parent should do, but not all parents can. And certainly not all parents who can actually do. Other parents stopped us on the way out. Shook Mom's hand. Some hugged her. One woman pressed a piece of paper into her palm, her phone number. "My daughter starts college next fall," the woman said. "And I'm terrified about the costs. Could I maybe call you sometime? Ask for advice?" Mom nodded, dazed. She'd spent 15 years feeling inadequate, like she wasn't doing enough, wasn't providing enough. And now strangers were asking her for advice. My classmates found me in the chaos. Word had spread through the graduating class about what happened on stage. They looked at Mom differently now. Not with pity, but with respect. One of my friends, whose dad was a surgeon and who'd never worried about money a day in his life, shook her hand and said, "My parents paid for school too. But what you did was harder. And more meaningful." We walked to the parking lot together. Mom's used car sat in the far corner. She'd arrived early, before the lot filled up. It was dented and old and the air conditioning didn't work properly. She patted the hood affectionately. "We made it," she said softly. "We actually made it." I hugged her in the parking lot, both of us still in our ceremony clothes. "You made it," I corrected. "You carried us here." We drove home with the windows down, my diploma in her lap, her speech folder in the back seat. She was exhausted but glowing. 15 years of weight lifting off her shoulders. At home, she took the payment receipts from the folder. All $67,000 documented in highlighted papers and bank statements. She'd been carrying them around for weeks, maybe months. Preparing for a confrontation she'd hoped would never come. "I wasn't planning to use these," she admitted. "I brought them just in case." I told myself I was being paranoid. "But you knew," I said. I knew he was capable of it. I just hoped he wouldn't. She got a frame from the closet. One she'd bought but never used. Carefully arranged the receipts inside, not all of them, but a representative sample. The first tuition payment. The last one. The car sale receipt. The documentation of Dad's $1,600 contribution. She hung it in the living room. Right above the couch where everyone who visits can see it. Not as a monument to resentment or anger. As a reminder. Of what she'd done. Of what she was capable of. Of her own strength that she'd doubted for so long. My diploma went up beside it. In a matching frame. Dad tried to call 3 times that week. I didn't answer. He sent a text, "We need to talk about what happened." That was inappropriate and embarrassing. I typed and deleted several responses. Finally settled on, "You were right about one thing. Credit should go where it's actually due." Then I blocked his number. Mom got a promotion at work 2 months later. The office job she'd been grinding at for years, they finally recognized her value. 15% raise. She cried when she got the news. Happy tears this time. She bought herself a new winter coat. A nice one, from an actual store instead of a thrift shop. Navy blue with buttons that didn't fall off. I watched her wear it for the first time, standing a little taller, walking a little differently. Like she finally believed she deserved good things too. I started my first real job in August. My first paycheck, I paid her back for 1 semester of college. $4,000. She tried to refuse it. I insisted. "We're a team," I told her. "You carried us for 15 years. Now it's my turn to help carry." She kept the check on her refrigerator for 2 weeks before depositing it. Just looking at it every morning. Proof that the sacrifice had mattered. That I'd grown up understanding the weight of what she'd carried alone. The manila folder still sits on her bookshelf. She never put it away. Says she might need it again someday. But really, I think she keeps it for a different reason. As evidence that silence doesn't mean invisible. That the quiet sacrifices count just as much as the loud ones. That truth has a way of surfacing, even when someone tries to bury it under lies. And that sometimes, 7 words are all you need to change everything. There's a difference between providing and sacrificing. My father provided child support. A legal obligation, the bare minimum, for $100 a month delivered like clockwork because a court said he had to. My mother sacrificed. Not because anyone forced her, not because a judge signed a paper, but because that's what love actually looks like when you strip away all the Hallmark card bullshit about how parenthood is supposed to feel. She sacrificed sleep. Mornings starting at 5 a.m., nights ending past midnight, her body running on caffeine and determination. She sacrificed her social life, no time for friends or dating when you're working 3 jobs and raising a kid alone. She sacrificed her own dreams. I found her college transcripts once, from before I was born. She'd wanted to be a teacher. Got through 2 years before money ran out. Never went back. She sacrificed her health. Bad knees from standing all day at the diner. Migraines from too much stress and not enough sleep. Weight gain from eating cheap processed food because that's what we could afford. She'd tell me she was fine, always fine, while popping ibuprofen like candy and ignoring the pain that never quite went away. She sacrificed her dignity sometimes too. Working retail at 51 because we needed an extra $300 a month. Taking orders from managers young enough to be her kids, folding clothes in the clearance section, getting yelled at by customers over return policies she didn't create. Coming home with that look on her face, exhausted and humiliated and trying to hide both. And through all of it, she never once asked for credit. Never once posted on social media about her struggles. Never once made me feel guilty about the cost of raising me. Never weaponized her sacrifice to manipulate or control. That's what real parents do. They sacrifice quietly. They show up consistently. They make the hard choices without announcing them to everyone in earshot. My father provided money sometimes. Then he provided lies about the money he didn't actually provide. He provided photo opportunities, posting about family values while abandoning his actual family. He provided a narrative where he was the hero, the responsible one, the good father who stepped up. And then he stood up in front of 300 people and demanded credit for work he didn't do. That's the thing about character. It shows up in the quiet moments, not the loud ones. It's there in the consistency of action, not the volume of announcement. Mom showed her character in 15 years of exhausted mornings and missed meals and sold jewelry. Dad showed his in one moment of ego and dishonesty. Children remember. We remember who showed up when things were hard. We remember who kept showing up even when showing up hurt. We remember the parent who stayed, who worked, who sacrificed without making a spectacle of their sacrifice. And we remember the parent who didn't. The story you tell about yourself doesn't matter nearly as much as you think it does. Because the people who lived through the reality know the truth. And eventually, somehow, that truth finds its moment. Dad spent 15 years crafting a narrative where he was the good guy. The provider. The responsible father who helped his daughter through college. And it took exactly 7 words and one manila folder to destroy that entire story in front of everyone he wanted to impress. Because lies are fragile. They require constant maintenance, constant reinforcement. The truth just is. It sits there in bank statements and receipts and worn shoes and exhausted faces. Quiet, undeniable, waiting. Mom taught me that real love doesn't announce itself. Doesn't demand recognition. Doesn't keep score or require an audience. Real love just keeps showing up, keeps doing the work, keeps carrying the weight even when nobody's watching. And if you're lucky enough to have someone in your life who loves you that way, who sacrifices without announcing it, who supports without demanding credit, who carries weight so you don't have to, then you owe them the truth. You owe them the acknowledgement they'd never ask for. That's why I said those 7 words. Not for revenge. Not for drama. But because my mother deserved to have her truth acknowledged. Because someone needed to say out loud what she'd never say herself, I did this. I carried this. I made this happen. And because sometimes, the only way to honor the parent who sacrificed everything is to stop protecting the parent who sacrificed nothing. The parent who shows up in the dark times deserves to be celebrated in the light. Always. If you're still watching this, I need you to know something. Your story matters. Maybe you're the parent who's working 3 jobs right now. The one who skips meals so your kids can eat. The one who drives a car with 200,000 miles on it because you spent the money you were saving for a new one on your daughter's brakes instead. The one who's so tired you sometimes cry in the shower because that's the only place you get 5 minutes alone. Nobody sees you. Nobody's writing news articles about you. You're not getting awards or recognition. You're just showing up, day after exhausted day, doing the hardest work there is. I see you. My mother was you. And I promise you, your kids see you too, even if they don't have the words to say it yet. They're watching. They're noticing. They're learning what real love looks like by watching you carry weight that would break most people. And someday, they'll understand the full weight of what you carried for them. Or maybe you're the kid. The one who watched your parents sacrifice everything. The one who remembers the quiet moments, your mom falling asleep at the kitchen table over bills, your dad wearing the same winter coat for years, the time you realized they were going without so you could have more. You carry guilt sometimes. You wish you'd understood earlier. You wish you'd said thank you more. You wish you could go back and be less difficult, less expensive, more grateful. Listen to me, it's not too late. Pick up the phone. Send the text. Write the letter. Tell them you see them. Tell them you understand now what you didn't understand then. Tell them the truth about what their sacrifice meant to you. My mother spent 15 years thinking her sacrifice wasn't enough. Thinking she should have done more, provided better, been stronger. She carried that belief until the moment those receipts came out on that stage. Until she finally saw herself reflected in 300 people standing to applaud her. Don't make your parent wait that long to know their sacrifice mattered. And if you're the other parent, the one who provided the minimum or didn't provide at all but tells everyone you did, if you're the one who takes credit for someone else's work, who rewrites history to make yourself look better, who lets the sacrificing parent stay invisible while you take bows. You can change this story. You can tell the truth. You can acknowledge what you didn't do and honor what someone else did. You can be honest with your kids about who carried the real weight. It's not too late to be the person you should have been all along. But if you can't do that, If you're going to keep lying and performing and taking credit for work you didn't do, then know this: the truth is coming. Maybe not today. Maybe not at graduation. But eventually, somehow, the truth surfaces. And the people who lived through the reality will remember. They'll remember, and they'll tell the story you tried to bury. This channel exists to tell the real stories. The ones about sacrifice and struggle and the quiet heroism of showing up. The ones about families that look messy and imperfect but are held together by love that doesn't announce itself. If these stories matter to you, if you see yourself or your parent or your life in them, then subscribe. Join this community of people who understand that real strength doesn't look like a social media post. That real love happens in the exhausted moments, not the highlighted ones. Leave a comment and tell me, who's the person in your life who sacrificed quietly? Who deserves recognition they've never asked for? I read every single comment, and your stories matter. They remind us all that we're not alone in this. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. The tired parent who thinks they're not doing enough. The adult kid who finally understands what their parent carried. The person who feels invisible but keeps showing up anyway. Let them know they're seen. Let them know their sacrifice counts. Let them know that silence doesn't mean invisible. Because the truth is, the people who make the most noise usually did the least work. And the people who carried the heaviest weight did it so quietly that sometimes even they forget what they survived. My mother worked 15 years in silence before anyone stood to applaud her. Don't let the parent who deserves recognition wait that long to receive it. They've already waited long enough. If you've ever watched someone sacrifice everything in silence, or if you were that person, this channel is for you. Subscribe to hear the stories that honor the real heroes. The ones who showed up in the dark and never asked for applause. Drop a comment telling me about the person in your life who carried the weight nobody saw. I read every single one, and your stories matter. Hit that share button. Send this to the parent who thinks their sacrifice wasn't enough. Send it to the adult child who finally understands. Send it to anyone who needs to know that quiet strength is still strength. The parent who loved you in the exhausted, invisible moments deserves to be seen. Let's make sure they are.